So this is U.S. History since World War II class. I'm Chris Babits. I'm applying for the middle school English and history teaching position. Before we get started, I actually would like to introduce the three students who have been taking this class this year. John, if you want to start.
John Fish. I'm a senior at the Oxford Academy. I'm going to Full Sail University in Orlando, Florida for game design, game development, and creative writing.
I'm Adam Pollock. I'm also a senior at Oxford Academy. I will be attending RIT in Rochester. I will also be studying game design and game development.
I'm Conor Holiday, also a senior here, and I will be going to either Columbia College in Chicago or Arizona State for film production.
And because of Conor, we actually have
To set up the camera in a sense where you could see everything that was going on. So I put a fisheye lens on so that everything is wider and further away, so you can see everything.
So what we've been learning about is basically the culture, politics, and international relations since World War II, obviously one of the seminal turning points in all of American history. We're at the point where we're talking about the conservative movement that really shapes a lot of our everyday politics. You see that today with the Tea Party. Adam, what's the Tea Party?
The Tea Party is a new conservative movement that was pretty much started by Glenn Beck, or at least he named it, that focuses on smaller government and less taxes, and there are some radicals in their movement, like there are in many other movements.
Yeah. There's obviously pros and cons to any movement, and we'll probably get into those a little later. But first, what we need to do is talk about how this differs from the Republican Party in general. John, you've done a lot of work where you've looked at Eisenhower specifically, who's the first Republican presidential nominee and then actual president in the post-World War II era. Can you explain what modern republicanism was for Eisenhower?
Well, it was more of a liberal view of some of the other Republicans that were running previously to him at the same time as him. It was less conservative than the other people. It focused more on the individual, but also on the bigger picture. He invested more in the country. He saw the country as a business because he himself was like a businessman, but he thought that everybody should have the right to pursue their own material needs, spiritual needs, and individualism in a sense.
Yeah, so what kind of things did he actually not cut that Republicans wanted him to cut from, say, the budget?
The budget? I'm not sure.
Well, there's something that FDR passes, and that's still very much seen as a... Well, there's the New Deal, it's a part of the New Deal, but it ensures some kind of, well, we could say, safety net, especially for older people.
Social Security.
Social Security is something that many Republicans at this time wanted cut, but he understands that this entitlement program is extremely important, and he doesn't cut it. That's one of the big things. If you look around you, you see an interstate highway system right down the road, right? And obviously that involved a large federal spending. These are not the ideas that are prevalent in today's Tea Party movement. So, it's important to understand that these are the conservatives going back towards their more conservative ideals, whereas Republicans had been a little more liberal maybe at the turn of the century. You can see this even in the 1964 nomination race in the Republican presidential primary. You had somebody like John D. Rockefeller, the governor of New York. New York's traditionally where on the political spectrum? Liberal. He had just gotten a divorce, which is not viewed very highly in presidential politics. He was basically similar to Eisenhower in many of his politics. Then you had Barry Goldwater. Does anybody remember where Barry Goldwater fit on the spectrum? He's different than those two. He's seen as more conservative. He's not moderate by any means. Some would call him an extremist. If you remember, I think I showed you the video that the Johnson campaign showed of the little girl plucking the daisies.
I don't remember
the countdown. Well, it was a video with a countdown and the girl is plucking flowers or plucking petals out of a flower. And there's a countdown, and all of a sudden there's a large nuclear explosion. Implying,
you did show me.
yes, implying that Barry Goldwater would be the end of humanity because he's so dangerous that he's going to use nuclear weapons in Indochina was the example that they were using. But this is a man, because of this libertarian personal rights beliefs, that thought that no one had, or the federal government didn't have a say in what you did over your own body. So his wife is actually one of the founding members of Planned Parenthood in Arizona. You know, could you imagine Newt Gingrich's wife being, his third wife, by the way, being the founding member of the New York chapter or the Georgia chapter of Planned Parenthood? It just doesn't add up into that party today, and that's obviously very important to understand how this is a very different party. There's a little more continuity, I would say, with the Democratic Party. And continuity doesn't necessarily mean a positive or negative thing, but just the mere fact that the past 30 years, this Republican Party has changed quite a bit. So now we have to explain why conservatism becomes popular in the 1970s. That's extremely important. We're looking at 4 economic conditions. You guys read last night or the night before about stagflation and the oil embargo. What was stagflation, Adam?
It was where you had an increase in unemployment as well as an increase in inflation, which led to bad things.
Like what kind of bad things?
Like the economy going into the tank.
Yeah, so if you have high unemployment and high inflation, you have people who are making less money but also
Can't afford what they need.
can't afford what they need. All this is brought on by an oil embargo especially, right? John, you love the Middle East. And you
Yeah,
love that
there's
stuff.
the Arab-Israeli conflict, and OPEC. They decided to not trade oil with the United States anymore.
Yeah. So we had the 1973 war, right?
Yeah.
In which is very different than the 67 war, right?
Yeah.
Who was the aggressor or preemptively struck in the 67 war?
Israel.
Israel. It's the opposite way in 73, right?
Yeah.
So the United States, still under Nixon, right?
Yeah.
They decide to do what?
Nixon creates the energy czar.
Well, we're still with the Israeli-Arab crisis. What does he do to support Israel?
He sends them money and weapons.
Money and weapons, and as much or more than the United States has ever done before. This is to understand the importance of Israel and the United States and their relationship from this point forward. This is like the no turning point, the no turning back point, where the relationship becomes, singular, and Israel becomes what it is today as the most important American ally in the region, if not one of the most important in the world, right up there with Great Britain. Now we're starting to see why this is so important. This is really starting to shape every single thing that you see on TV, no matter what day you're watching it or when you're seeing it. The conservative movement also picks up on family values issues. Conor, what would be family values issues?
Big thing was neo-Christianism. Religion was obviously a huge portion. And then there were other issues such as, family morals. Whatever, what you would typically see inside of an American household is something that neoconservatives really try to emphasize because they try to connect with
Are we talking
their
about
voters.
neoconservatives yet, or are we just talking about religious people on the religious right? Somebody like Jerry Falwell's Moral Majority.
I guess you're right. The neoconservatives came a little bit later, but I guess conservatives in the 1970s were really responsible for the formation of the neoconservatives.
Ultimately, they share a lot of the same beliefs. Adam, what would you say is the main difference with neoconservatives?
Neoconservatives are a lot similar to kind of extreme liberals, as we kind of discussed,
In which way, though?
Well, that's more in foreign policy.
More in foreign policy.
Yeah.
And how so would you say that their foreign policy is led